Hello. Um, Today I would like to talk about the issue of dissemination information that doesn't quite correspond to reality and the euphemisms currently used by Russia government regarding what they call the special military operation in Ukraine. And I would like to discuss the topic through the prism of the play Fairy Tale by the Soviet playwright Evgeny Schwartz called The Dragon. To begin, I would like to briefly explain the plot and the general theme of the play. So the story The Dragon draws inspiration from the folk tales of Southeast Asia about the dragon. In this tale, the dragon cannot be defeated because anyone who defeats it becomes a dragon themselves, except for the youth with poor intentions who manages to slay the beast. However, Schwartz explores the theme of the victory, turning into a tyrant from completely contrasting perspectives. In the play, the majority of the people who are saved by the hero actually believe that living under the dragon's rules is tolerable. They have grown accustomed to the harshness and oppression, and each individual hopes that things won't get any worse, because engaging in a battle with the dragon would only lead to certain death. These people are not particularly eager to be rescued. They no longer desire freedom and prefer to remain in slavery as long as the master is somewhat lenient. And when they are freed from one tyrant, they will come under the control of another. The hero who genuinely tries to save the people is surprised to discover that killing the dragon is not enough to liberate them. This is a brief summary, and in reality the story doesn't end there, but unfolds against the historical background. The play was written between 1942 and 1944, and in the Soviet Union, the dragon served as an allegory for Nazism. In fact, the titular monster bears some obvious characteristics of Nazism. However, it is widely believed that Schwartz, who was closely associated with the circle of avant-garde poets and artists, was referring to a tyranny much closer to home than a Nazi allegory. Undoubtedly, he was also addressing Soviet censors. During Stalin's era, Schwartz himself experienced imprisonment during the Stalin's purges. When Khrushchev came to power, this play was staged in one of the Moscow theaters, and in general on the stage. In the play, it's described that the dragon has 3 heads, and in the production on the stage, one hand resembled Stalin, while the other had traits of Khrushchev. I believe Khrushchev even attended one of these performances and afterwards said no, let's wrap it, guys. And once again, it was banned. Therefore, one could say that the play was officially released around 1988, when Mikhail Gorbachev's policy of glasnost reached its peak. It was also adapted into a film titled To Kill a Dragon. Thus, even then, the Soviet authorities feared that people seeing it would start asking questions about what was happening. I believe this historical background adds an extra layer of magic and brilliance to the play. What is described it within the work itself reflects the external reality. Unfortunately, this play remains relevant today. I suggest moving on to the question of what makes this play relevant. Well, I would answer many things. However, I would like to focus on one aspect, perhaps the informational war. And I would like to quote a scene where the main hero gathers courage to save society from the dragon politics and the dragon's walk that hovers over the people. He challenges the dragon to a fight. Specifically, the scene during the battle, where one of the characters, Henry, is representative of dragon politics, simultaneously tells the citizen what is happening on the square. Beginning of the quote. Henry. Listen to a bulletin from the city government. The battle is nearing the end. The enemy has lost his sword. His lance is broken. His pliant carpet is being eaten by moths, which has rapidly destroyed the enemy's air force. Cut off from his supplies, the enemy is unable to get mothballs and has to catch the moths from his hands, leaving him unable to maneuver properly. The only reason Lord Dragon is not destroying the enemy yet is his love for war. He has not yet had his fill of battle and has not finished severing his own fists of bravery. Townsman number 1. Now I get it. Little boy. Mommy, look. I swear, he is getting his butt kicked. Townsman number 1. It's a trick of the eye, kid. Little boy. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We are being tricked. I've been in plenty of fights. I know when someone gets involved. Townsman number 1. Get the child out of here. Townsman number 2. I don't believe my eyes. A doctor. Get me an eye doctor. Townsman number 1. It's falling down. This is more than I can bear. Get out of my way. Let me see it. One of the dragon's heads lands on the square with a massive thud. End of the quote. Well, I think it's a powerful scene that fully illustrated the current situation inside Russia. It portrays the newly invented jargon that the Russian government uses, the euphemisms they employ to communicate with their citizens and to cover up events taking place. One of the commonly used euphemisms is special military operation, or simply they call it events in Ukraine, which is in reality refers to the invasion of Ukraine. Another example is how they label their opponents as fascists instead of acknowledging them as the critics of the Russian authorities. South Slavic speech is used to refer to the Ukrainian language. Liberation of Crimea is the term of the annexion of Crimea. Liberated territories are actually captured and occupied territories according to international law. Mobilized individuals are called recently conscripted servicemen. They refer to explosions as flashes or bangs, and when they make a retreat, it terms as a gesture of goodwilling or a step of goodwilling. They also claim to be protecting children from information, which is essentially censorship and a pretext for blocking adult content. There are many such examples. For instance, an accident could mean an accident or a nature disaster. Yes, it's a massive folk and new language that they offer to their citizens. Based on this, the question arises, how does society react on this draconian policy? In this quoted passage, we can observe that society completely turns a blind eye. Perhaps another question arises, does society have a choice? Does it see an alternative? To some extent, it may see one. Well, for example, if we consider the current situation in Russia, where the authorities impose information censorship, block accesses to many internet resources that do not align with their politics, and impose sanctions based on current events. In essence, people genuinely do not see alternatives, and this is a significant problem, which is why few resist. Plus, this regime, this dragon, has firmly established itself to the point where people are afraid to even take a breath, just to ensure that the dragon doesn't breathe out its fire. They hope for some softening, unfortunately. The fog has become so thick that nothing can be seen. By the way, regarding the fog, I will mention that I'm making a slight allusion to Zametin's work of the same name, The Dragon. If you are familiar with it, perhaps you have read it. Well, he wrote about kind of similar concept, but in 1917 during the October Revolution, and describing how a dragon with fog loomed over St. Petersburg. I suggest moving on to the question of what happening next. In the end, the hero defeats the dragon and changes occur. A new power emerges, and a new dragon comes along saying like, well, did we defeat the dragon? Yes, we did. Are you happy? Yes, we are happy. All right, then we carry on. And a new corrupt official arrives. The dragon's policy is essentially remain unchanged. Only the euphemisms change. It's called right now change. It's called right now new freedom, democracy. And the most frustrating part is that there is no real change happening. And here I will quote what the main character said in this play. Beginning of the quote. Lancelot. The task ahead is meticulous, no worse than embroidery. In each of them you will have to slay the dragon. End of the quote. So it turns out that simply killing the dragon is not enough. It turns out that the dragon resides with each of them. And right away I want to quote a politician and opponent of Putin regime, Mikhail Khodorkovsky. He recently released a book in 2023 that titled How to Kill the Dragon. So this dragon is a generic term that stretches through the ages. The problem remains highly relevant. I hope it reaches some culmination point where something will change, but those are just my hopes. Well, in this same book, it seemed to me that he made an honest effort to raise a question for which he doesn't provide answers. He writes that these are questions that Russia rulers should ask themselves. He presents such an interesting thought. Beginning of the quote. By the dragon, I do not mean Putin. He's just one of the reincarnation of the dragon, but the autocratic, despotic system of power. End of the quote. Yes, in fact, the dragon resides in the hearts of many because it stretches back, crudely speaking, to the beginning of the Russian Empire. It is simply the centuries-long reincarnation of dragon, where the habit of having an unified identity and an authoritarian regime has taken roots in each person. People are afraid of freedom, unfortunately. They even don't know what is it. And it requires meticulous work on society as a whole to truly change something, to try to open their eyes, to not get intoxicated by this fog. And at the end of the play, the main character notices this phenomenon, says that, no, this all wrong. He exposes the newly arrived dragon and takes on the task of approaching power. When he reaches this point, one of the citizens, referred as a gardener in the play, gives such an interesting phrase that I would like to quote and perhaps leave as a small open-ended conclusion to reflect on the end of this podcast. Beginning of the quote. Gardener. But please, be patient, Sir Lancelot. I beg you, be patient. Nurture. Build fires, warmth its growth. Remove the weeds carefully, so as not to harm the healthy roots. Because if you think about it, people essentially, perhaps with all the reservations, deserve careful nurturing. End of the quote. Thank you very much for listening. Have a nice day and goodbye.